Apologies for the audio issue. We're taking the roll call. Commissioner Itica,
Present.
Commissioner Linder,
I'm here.
Commissioner Satanovich,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Johnson,
I'm here.
and Chair Crushhour is absent.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a brief presentation about any land use planning issue or county concern that is not on the agenda. Do we have any business from the public? Not seeing any yet, so we'll move right into our public hearings. Our first public hearing is ordinance 25-03. It's a Goal 16 exception, dredge disposal sites in conservation, other resources, and AC 2 zone. Let's see. So we have a, this is a legislative hearing regarding ordinance 25-03. It's a request by Tetra Tech on behalf of the Port of Portland for an exception to Goal 16 estuarine resources to allow in-water dredge material disposal at 4 sites within the Columbia River estuary that are designated conservation or other resources. Are we gonna do these one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, we'll do these one at a time. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Hearing none. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? Hearing none. Staff report. Will staff please make their report?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to take up a lot of time today, but I want to, first of all, kind of give you some background about generally the 4 applications, walk you generally through the goal exception process and how we do estuary planning. We went through this at the end of last year, but I know that we've gotten some new members, I believe, since then, so I just wanted to refresh everyone. Rebecca, if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So every 20 years, the Army Corps has a dredge material management plan. It's updated every 20 years. And so back in 2022 process, and it wasn't until 2023 where the county became involved in it. We were made a cooperating agency along with DLCD, which is the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And so we were given the opportunity to review the draft environmental impact statement and provide comments back on that. And it was during that review where we identified these various proposed disposal sites that were either in areas that are designated conservation in our comp plan or that are designated natural. And typically, dredge disposal is allowed in areas designated development. We do allow beach nourishment in conservation zones, but only if those sites have been added to the comp plan and there's been an exception to Goal 16 taken. So this process of discovery and this review process basically led, beginning in 2024, early 2024, to a series of weekly meetings between the county, the Army Corps staff, and staff from DLCD to try and narrow down the list of sites that would potentially need a goal exception in order to be determined consistent with the county's local comprehensive planning policies and goals. And so we've been in this process now for almost 2 years. And it was in January of 2025 where Port of Portland submitted these 4 applications that we've got here today. And so that's kind of the background of how we ended up here. Next slide, please. And then you can go to the next one as well. So, as we know, Oregon planning is not simple. It's very convoluted. There are a lot of complexities to it, and there are a lot of different layers. And so one of the layers that these applications are working within, and that the county works within, and that the Army Corps, to the maximum extent practicable, works in, is, first of all, the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Program, which was founded in 1977. It consists of several different goals in the comp plan, which I'll talk about in a moment. There's territorial sea plans, there's estuary planning, which we will be focusing on today, and planning associated with different types of hazards, especially flood hazards. As part of the Coastal Zone Management Program, federal agencies are required to be in compliance, again, to the maximum extent practicable with state and local policies regarding land use. And so this is a program that you can see from the map, covers the entire coast of the state, and it covers almost the entirety of Clatsop County. Next slide, please. And so within Oregon, we know that there are 19 statewide planning goals that cover land use, land and water use throughout the state. 18 of those goals are applicable here in Clatsop County. The last 4, goals 16, 17, 18, and 19, are what are called the coastal goals. And so they deal with many different things. We're going to focus today on goal 16, which deals exclusively with estuarine resources. Next slide, please. So every estuary has a management plan. We have 3 estuaries here in the county: the Columbia River, the Nicanacum River, and Ecola Creek. The management plan for the Columbia River estuary was completed in the 1970s, so it is a very old plan. It definitely does need to be updated, but it's what we work with in terms of our regulations. The management plans classify each estuary as either a natural estuary, a conservation estuary, or a development estuary. The Columbia River is classified as a deep draft development estuary, meaning that more intensive types of uses are appropriate for the estuary, but maybe not everywhere in the estuary. And even within the Columbia River estuary, it's broken into further management units, some of which are development, like the flow lane, where the Federal Navigation Channel is. Others are designated natural, and others are conservation. Conservation areas are perhaps not as environmentally pristine or sensitive as areas designated natural. So there's this progression as you move from development down to conservation, down to natural, in terms of the resources that you're trying to protect. Next slide, please. Okay, and then to further layer on the regulation and the requirements, in addition, on the left, where we've got 22 sub-area plans that cover the Columbia River estuary, and those are included in the staff reports today, where we looked at each of those policies. There's the Dredge Material Management Plan, which the county adopted the Crest Dredge Material Management Plan in 2005, and then we readopted it with all the exhibits back in 2023, I believe. So those are the sites that are in place now. Along with that, there's a dredge material disposal map and an overlay, which we will get to when we talk about Ordinance 2506, I believe. And it's not just the county's comprehensive plan that deals with the estuary. The cities of Warrenton and Astoria also have comprehensive plan policies and implementing ordinances that cover the portions of the estuary that are within their jurisdiction. Next slide, please. All right, so the goal exception process. Next slide, please. So a goal exception is very similar in concept to a variance request, where an applicant is basically asking to do something that is not permitted under the regulations. And this is a process that was set up with the statewide land use planning system. And it was recognized that there could be occasions when something that would not normally be consistent with a statewide planning goal could occur in those areas if certain conditions of approval are applied and if they can meet different requirements to show why the site or the project would be appropriate and shouldn't be subject to the requirements of that particular statewide planning goal. So there are three different types of goal exceptions. One is when properties have already been physically developed in a way that's not consistent with the requirements of a goal. So where we've got, for example, our residential agricultural zones, those would have been subject to either an exception from Goal 3, agricultural lands, or Goal 4, forest lands, because they had already been developed with homes and residences, or in some cases, businesses, and so they weren't really compatible with the requirements or the purposes of either agricultural or forest lands. So that's one way you can do a goal exception. The second way is if the land has already been irrevocably committed, which means basically that you've allowed development around it to occur that's not consistent with the goal. And so having that one little isolated piece would not, adhering to the goal wouldn't make sense. So you basically have already committed it to future development of some sort just by the process of having allowed other development around it. The reasons exception is what we will be looking at today. And a reasons exception is based on 4 criteria that are in Oregon administrative rules. Basically, and I'm summarizing here, but the 4 reasons are: you have to show why the goal should not apply to your project. You have to show that there are no other areas available that also wouldn't require a goal or that would not require a goal exception. You have to show that the impacts at the site are not greater than any impacts that could occur if you picked a different site that needed a goal exception. And then finally, you have to show that what you're proposing to do is going to be compatible with the surrounding uses. So in addition to that, goal exceptions also have to comply with any other applicable local standards and policies. And that's one reason why the staff report is so big, because we have a lot of different policies and implementing standards in our comprehensive plan and our zoning ordinance that deal with activities within the estuary. So there's a lot that we had to review. If the goal exception is approved, then also the approving jurisdiction needs to amend its comprehensive plan in order to document the exception. So I'm going to take a brief pause here just to see if there's any questions from the Planning Commission about the background material or the process or the goal exception process.
Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Hearing none.
Hearing none. All right, Rebecca, you can go on. Next slide. And the one after that, please. All right, so Ordinance 2503, which begins on page 3 of your Planning Commission agenda, is a request for an exception to Goal 16, estuarine resources, for 4 dredge material disposal sites at the following locations within the estuary. River Mile 27.4, this is an in-water shallow site, meaning that it's at a depth less than 20 feet. River Mile 28.4, which is an in-water transfer site. A transfer site is where they are basically dredging out a bit, filling it with dredge until they can get it transferred to its final resting location, so to speak. So it's a temporary holding site for dredge material. River Mile 29.1 is another in-water shallow site, and 34.2 is another transfer site. Next slide, please. So these are the 4 sites and their location within the estuary. They're the ones that are circled in yellow. These are all designated conservation other resources in the comprehensive plan, and they're all zoned aquatic conservation 2. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, Oregon Administrative Rules 660 Division 4, subsection 20, Part 2, and then we will go into the different subparts of it. But these are the 4 reasons that have to be met in order for a goal exception to be approved. And this analysis, which goes much more in depth than I'm going to go through during the PowerPoint presentation, this analysis begins on page 160 of your agenda package. And it includes both the applicant's response and then the staff analysis and findings for each of these 4 reasons for the goal exception. So the purpose of Goal 16, statewide planning Goal 16, is to recognize and protect the unique environmental, economic, and social values of each estuary and associated wetlands, and to protect, maintain, where appropriate, develop, and where appropriate, restore the long-term environmental, economic, and social values, diversity, and benefits of Oregon's estuaries. So that's the purpose of Goal 16. So as we look at these different sites and the reasons in OAR that we're going to evaluate, that's kind of the purpose of the goal, and to keep that in the back of your head. Subsection 2A of OAR Division 4, subsection 20, this is the reason why the goal should not apply to this particular project. So why Goal 16 is really not applicable, or this project shouldn't have to comply with the purpose of Goal 16. And so the applicant has proposed several reasons, including the need to maintain the federal navigation channel, being able to retain the sediment within the river system, so not using ocean disposal or upland disposal, which would not let that sediment re-enter the river system. And it's very important that that sediment remains within the estuary and the river, as it helps stabilize the river bottom and the morphology, and it's a very limited resource, this river sediment. It's been declining over the years for a variety of different reasons, potentially floodplain development, dam construction, and other types of development that are preventing that sediment from entering the river. It's potential that at some of these dredge material sites, there may be ecological benefits as the dredge disposal ends and sites, repopulate with plants and animals. When we get to the next case, there may be some different ecological benefits as well. And again, because we are talking about dredged material from the federal navigation channel within the Columbia River, these having in-water transfer sites are required. Part of it is because the dredge equipment that is being used by the Army Corps, the pipeline dredges only have a capacity to transfer dredge material within a 2-mile radius, just because of the limitations of the equipment. So where you have shoaling that may occur more than 2 miles from a designated disposal site, there's just no place to take it unless you can load it up on a barge and ship it off somewhere, which is not consistent with other parts of our comp plan in terms of air quality, environmental quality, water quality, things like that. And you read, so there's a lot of things that happen here. As staff analysis shows, sorry, next slide, Rebecca. The 4 sites that are part of this application have a total area of just over 165 acres. Estimated that there are approximately 50,000 acres of river area that are considered shallow water, again, less than 20 feet in depth. And that this particular goal exception, based on 166 acres, is approximately 0.33% of that total shallow water area within the estuary. Again, it's recognizing the importance of needing to retain that sediment within the river to maintain the river bottom morphology, that would preclude the use of ocean disposal or upland disposal. We know that there is not sufficient capacity within the flow lane to accommodate all the volume of dredge material that's anticipated over this 20-year plan period. And again, we've talked about the limitations due to the pipeline dredge. And it's important to note that the Army Corps' mission to maintain the federal navigation channel is a congressionally mandated one, and that there is a very large economic benefit that comes from maintenance of the federal navigation channel. The Columbia River here transports annually over 62 million tons of cargo worth approximately $25 billion. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So the conclusion for the first reason criteria, staff concluded that the reasons were sufficient to justify a goal exception. We do recognize that there are potentially at least temporary impacts that will occur resulting from the use of these 4 sites as dredge material disposal sites. We have recommended conditions of approval that we will discuss in a few minutes that we feel will enable these sites to comply to the maximum extent practicable with the county's comprehensive plan and with our implementing ordinances. So we feel that that first reasons criteria has been met. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the second reasons criteria that we have to evaluate. We have to verify or determine that there are no other areas available that would not require a goal exception. And so when the Army Corps does its draft environmental impact statement, they are required to look at different alternatives. And so 5 alternatives that were considered as part of this DMMP update, the Dredge Material Management Plan update. They looked at, was there capacity in the flow lane? Were there areas within the aquatic development zones that are part of the county zoning that would allow dredge material disposal? They looked at areas that are outside of the estuary, so going further upriver, and then again, upland disposal and ocean disposal. And it was determined, again, for several different reasons, including that need to retain that sediment budget within the river system that would preclude upland and ocean disposal. The cost and the impacts to air and water quality by transporting sediment upriver, not to mention the actual monetary cost of doing that, were prohibitive. And then the flow lane and the aquatic development zones are basically synonymous. We don't have any development areas that are not part of the flow lane, and we know that there's not sufficient capacity there. Next slide, please. So again, staff, in their analysis and findings, basically came to the conclusion that there were no other areas available that would not require a goal exception. We, again, are requesting and recommending that conditions of approval be applied to make sure that these sites comply to the maximum extent practicable with our goals and policies and implementing ordinances. And with those conditions, we believe that this requirement can be met. Next slide, please. All right. Our third reasons criteria has to do with looking at potential impacts on environmental, economic, social, and energy resources, and weighing whether those impacts at these 4 sites would be greater than if they picked a different area in the estuary that also needed a goal exception, but maybe the impact would be slightly less. And so that's what this criteria is going to focus on. The materials that were provided by the applicant did look at all 4 areas. The impacts are anticipated to be temporary and minor to moderate. And once the disposal activity has ceased at these sites, then sites would repopulate with both flora and fauna. In terms of environmental consequences, they looked at the water quality, impacts from turbidity, they looked at impacts on ESA Endangered Species Act listed species and non-ESA listed species, and also impacts to shorelines. The economic impacts included potential temporary impacts to both commercial and recreational users and fisheries during the dredging and placement activities. But potentially there could be other economic benefits that come after placement has concluded, which might include things like sand sales and potential marine industrial development. The social impacts, again, are likely to be to recreational users, but also to aesthetics along the river. And again, these are expected to be temporary in nature. Obviously, during dredging and placement activities, you're going to see the dredge equipment. It'll be visible from the land. It'll be visible when you're out on the river itself. But again, these are expected to be temporary impacts, and there are no residences, scenic points, or parks that are going to be affected. Finally, energy impacts. We've talked about this briefly, but when you are having to transport sediment for longer distances, that is going to have an impact on your greenhouse gas emissions, which was cited by the applicant as one of the reasons why this would be a lower impact than trying to ship the sediment upriver. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, during the staff analysis and findings, we came to the conclusion that the applicant provided sufficient evidence to demonstrate that long-term there would not be impacts that would be of higher consequence or greater consequence at these 4 sites than if they had picked alternative sites. And in fact, one of the things that was done in the draft environmental impact statement is that there were several sites that were also evaluated, but then later rejected as potential sites simply because they would have increased shoaling in certain areas and had a detrimental effect on shoaling, whereas these sites did not. Again, we are recommending conditions of approval for this, to ensure that this particular criterion is met and that our comprehensive plan and implementing ordinances are complied with. Next slide, please. And our last reasons exception criteria is that these 4 sites need to be compatible with adjacent uses. And one of the things cited by the applicant is that the placement sites were intentionally selected because these are areas that, given the dynamic nature of the river, are more stable compared to other sites, and they were chosen to help reduce the need for new in-water retention structures, which creates its own little impact on river hydrology in the way sediment flows through the river. They chose the sites based on the ability to provide sufficient capacity over the 20-year planning period for the dredge material management plan. Again, making sure that these sites would be located in areas that would keep the sediment within the river environment. And then they cited the best management practices that are going to be required by different things, the biological opinions and water quality certifications that they will have to, anybody who's doing dredging and disposal would have to follow. So, next slide, please. Okay. And again, based on our analysis, there was in the draft environmental impact statement a note that potentially there could be effects on river hydrology and morphology within the Lewis and Clark Wildlife Refuge. And this is based on the use of 2 sites, 27.4 in-water shallow and 27.5 beach nourishment or shoreline placement. We believe that through conditions of approval, through continued monitoring and adaptive management, that these effects can be mitigated, and ensuring compatibility with the adjacent uses. And again, requiring all the best management practices that are already going to be required from federal agencies and state agencies to make sure that those are complied with. So we believe with those conditions of approval that this criterion can also be met. Next slide, please. And so we are, as staff, recommending that your planning commission recommend to the Board of Commissioners that ordinance 2503 be adopted as presented with the conditions that are listed on pages 189 and 190 of the agenda package. Next slide, please. And here I will pause for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Does anyone have any questions for staff at this time? Any of our online commissioners? I have a question about the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge, and do we receive comments from, are the disposal sites in the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge? Have we received comments from them?
So I don't, excuse me, remember specifically if they are adjacent to or within the refuge. So I'm going to defer to the applicant for that. We did not receive comments from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which manages it. There is a requirement that the Army Corps has that they do need to coordinate with U.S. Fish and Wildlife as they begin disposal activities in this area. So, but I'm going to defer to the applicant about whether or not the sites are actually located within the refuge, because I don't recall. Sorry.
Okay. I have a few other concerns that maybe the applicant will be able to address as well, and that is some of the other disposal sites that have been created up and down the river have created some bird habitat, which has caused predation on salmon and caused a whole host of other issues. And I'm wondering if this has that same potential and how the Corps plans to address that issue. But I don't really have any other questions for our staff at this time. So when will the applicant, is that under the public agency comment or?
No, I don't know what's on your script, but typically the applicant gets an unlimited time to present their I don't want to say side, but their project.
Would that be after before public testimony?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not on my.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Any questions for staff right now before we move on to the applicant? If not, does the applicant have a presentation for us?
Hey, good morning. Tom Bullion with the Port of Portland. We have some prepared comments, we don't have a PowerPoint, but yeah, so the prepared comments were probably intended to cover all four of the different ordinances. So I could share that, and then perhaps we could circle back to the two outstanding questions, and then I guess if there are any other additional questions, maybe at that point, if that works.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, so good morning and thank you, commissioners. For the record, my name is Tom Bullion. I'm a planning manager with the Port of Portland, representing the applicant. My address is Box 3529, Portland, Oregon, 97208. The Port of Portland appreciates the enormous amount of time and effort that Director Henriksen and her staff have invested to review the applications, prepare the staff reports. We also appreciate the Planning Commission's patience in granting an earlier continuance to allow additional time for resolution of outstanding issues, culminating in the staff recommendation before you today. During this review, and especially over the past month, the Port of Portland has worked closely with the county, state agency partners, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to ensure that the conditions of approval being recommended by staff are clear and workable, while guaranteeing compliance with the county's code and comprehensive plan. We agree with and endorse the conditions of approval recommended by staff. So you may be wondering, how is it that the Port of Portland got involved in this process? So just a little bit of context, the Port of Portland is a non-federal sponsor of the Lower Columbia River Dredge Material Management Plan, or DMMP, which is the plan developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that provides for long-term maintenance of the Lower Columbia River Federal Navigation Channel from Clatsop County upstream to Portland and Vancouver. The term non-federal sponsor refers to the Port of Portland's role as one of 5 non-federal sponsor ports for the Lower Columbia River Federal Navigation Channel Maintenance Project, and the only Oregon sponsor port. Non-federal sponsor ports participate in development of plans and studies, are obligated for a share of the cost of the project, as well as obtaining all lands, easements, and rights of way needed for construction, operation, and maintenance of the project. Separate from the non-federal sponsor port role, the Port of Portland works as a contractor for the Corps for maintenance of the Lower Columbia River Federal Navigation Channel. As background, the Port of Portland was established by the state of Oregon all the way back in 1891 for the express purpose of dredging the navigation channel from Portland to the Pacific. Eventually, the Corps took over responsibility, but continued to contract with the Port of Portland to maintain the channel. So circling back to the DMMP, the plan will guide how the Federal Navigation Channel is maintained over the next 20 years. Most relevant to the applications before the Commission this morning, the DMMP details where and how dredge materials will be placed within the Lower Columbia River. The Corps has concluded that it is necessary to place dredge materials outside of the navigation channel at 10 sites within Clatsop County where state and local law would not otherwise authorize disposal. The Port of Portland, private marine terminals, and marine service providers, Oregon shippers, and the state of Oregon all rely on maintenance of the Federal Navigation Channel to ensure safe navigation for Oregon's multi-billion-dollar maritime shipping economy. It's extremely important that the Federal Navigation Channel be adequately maintained. Therefore, the Port of Portland agreed to submit these applications in an effort to align the county's land use laws with the DMMP. So just a little bit more background on the DMMP. The plan covers the Lower Columbia River, which extends from River Mile 3 near the mouth of the Columbia River upstream to River Mile 105.5 near Vancouver, Washington. U.S. Congress has ordered the Corps to maintain the Federal Navigation Channel to ensure safe and efficient passage for commercial and recreational vessels. The Corps must maintain the Federal Navigation Channel at its congressionally authorized depth, 43 feet, and the width of 600 feet to accommodate ship traffic. Due to the dynamic nature of the river, regular dredging is needed to maintain the authorized dimensions of the Federal Navigation Channel. As a result, it's necessary to identify locations where dredged material will be placed. Corps policy requires all federally maintained navigation projects to demonstrate there's enough dredge material placement capacity for a minimum of 20 years. The Corps has determined that there's not enough capacity to meet that 20-year requirement. So for that reason, through the DMMP planning effort, the Corps determined how much dredging material capacity is needed, identified potential placement sites for use, and evaluated and compared the sites to make recommendations for their use. Just in terms of the process with the DMMP, it's a result of a coordinated multi-year planning effort led by the Corps with support from the non-federal Oregon and Washington sponsor ports. The planning process has included multiple public environmental reviews in which state and federal agencies, as well as tribal partners and members of the public, have had extensive input. More specifically, cooperating agencies in the plan's development include NOAA Fisheries, US EPA, Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon, Cowlitz Indian Tribe, Oregon DEQ, Oregon DLCD, and Clatsop County. Those reviews have included extensive analyses of potential environmental impacts of dredging and placement of dredge material within the Columbia River, including analyses of potential impacts to fish and wildlife habitat and water quality. Throughout the environmental review and permitting processes, the DMMP has continued to be refined with the goal of lessening impacts. Those refinements have included the elimination of some sites entirely and specific modifications to other sites. Ultimately, those federal and state environmental reviews will result in legal conditions requiring that the DMMP be implemented to avoid, minimize, and mitigate environmental impacts, including impacts to fish and wildlife habitat within the lower Columbia River. Coordination between the Corps and its federal, state, and local agency partners is ongoing and continues to shape the scope of the DMMP. Most recently, the Port of Portland has worked closely with the county, the Corps, DLCD, and other state agencies to refine staff's proposed conditions so we could come to the Planning Commission today with a unified set of recommendations in requesting your approval. Again, we wanted to thank Director Henriksen for a very thorough staff report and presentation this morning. Just one point of emphasis that these sites will most likely only ever be used by the Corps or its agents, including the Port of Portland as a contractor, to maintain the federal navigation channel. It's highly unlikely that non-federal users would ever receive the necessary authorizations to use these sites, and any non-federal users seeking to dispose of materials at these sites would be required to secure additional approvals from the county through a future land use process. So, in conclusion, maintaining safe navigation of the federal navigation channel is essential to the Clatsop County's economy as well as the state of Oregon as a whole, and therefore we believe there's more than sufficient reasons for the county to approve these applications. Moreover, these applications are the result of years of careful and detailed analysis by federal, state, and local agency partners, and staff have recommended conditions of approval to ensure compliance with the county's land use standards, which the Port of Portland supports. We urge the Commission to vote in favor of the applications and recommend to the County Board of Commissioners that the applications be approved with the conditions recommended by staff. Thank you for your consideration, and now we can revisit the questions that have been already posed and potentially answer any additional questions that may come up. So, yeah, I don't know if there are any additional questions at this point, or we could circle back to the two questions that are on the table. The question regarding the location of the two sites relative to the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge. I will ask our consultant partners at Tetra Tech if you are able to, excuse me, clarify that point.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning. This is Paul Salo with Tetra Tech. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I saw a nod.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you. With respect to the first question on sites proposed in the Lewis and Clark Wildlife Refuge, there are two listed within the refuge, and those are the first one is, let me get to it here. Excuse me for a moment. It is identified as 025.4, and it's an in-water site. And then the second site, it's a site that is right next to the one I just listed. These two are kind of in a pair. It's also 0-25.4, and that's a beach nourishment site. So those two sites are right next to each other and kind of in tandem. Those are the two that were listed as within the refuge. And we can show a map if that's helpful.
Okay, I think I found a map on page 29. Okay. Did we get any comments from the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge regarding these proposed sites?
County staff did not receive any.
Did the applicant consult with Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge, and did they have any comments that are included?
So we, the Port of Portland, did not specifically consult with the Lewis and Clark Wildlife Refuge as a part of these series of applications.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Commissioners, for the record, Marissa Moeller. I am an attorney at Stoll Reeves and legal counsel for the Port of Portland, the applicant in this process. And we did want to respond to your question about AV and predation impacts. So just taking a step back, I want to be very clear that development of the DMMP and then evaluation of all the environmental impacts potentially associated with the DMMP is the responsibility of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And so the port's role in this application was really to kind of package and present to you that technical information provided by those experts. As Director Henriksen, explained in great detail, and thank you for that staff report, there has been a very extensive federal environmental permitting process behind the DMMP. And so as we discussed in our application, and those materials all came from the Corps and the federal permitting documents that were prepared by the Corps and other federal agencies. We understand that the Corps and other federal agencies are evaluating avian predation impacts, and it's possible that mitigation may be required as part of the federal permitting process. But unfortunately, the port is not in a position to provide any more specific technical response. That would be a question for the Corps. I also wanted to note that the Corps did provide a supplemental response on June 14th to the county, and that response also addresses avian predation impacts and potential best management practices and mitigation measures and adaptive management and monitoring measures associated with those potential impacts. So our apologies for not being able to provide a more specific response, but hopefully those materials can help answer your question.
Okay, thank you, Marissa. Any other questions for the applicant before I move on to public testimony? Any other questions for staff before we move on to public testimony? If not, this hearing is open for public testimony. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board or LUBA based on that issue. All speakers from the floor to sign in, state their name and address before speaking, and if you are appearing in a representative capacity, identify who you represent. And please limit remarks to a reasonable period of time, 3 minutes, in order to permit all present an equal opportunity to speak. We do have a few people that are signed in. We have, the first one on the list is Chris Leach, is that correct? And you didn't mark whether you wanted to speak or not. No. Thank you. Okay, next on the list is Scott McMullen.
I'm here for goal
18. Okay, goal 18. So we'll save that for goal 18. So we don't have any other comments on these specific items. Do we have anyone online that wishes to comment from the public? Okay, no public testimony. Do we have any public agency comments? Hearing none. Any final questions of witnesses or staff? Hearing none, I will close the public testimony at 10:51. Okay, discussion is open for Planning Commission members. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this ordinance?
I have
Not hearing any yet. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Commissioner Linder?
Yeah, thank you. Doesn't really have a lot of bearing on this, but it's related. the Corps of Engineers sometimes sort of does what they want anyways. So regardless of what we decide and what the county ultimately decides, I mean, I kind of get the impression they're just, this is the plan and this is what they're going to do. Is that sort of correct?
I can't speak for every action that the Army Corps may take. I know that we have had one incident when that did occur. But again, that's all I'm gonna say, yeah. And again, just to point out, the Army Corps, as a federal agency, is not required to get local permits. Again, what they have to demonstrate is that they are consistent to the maximum extent practicable with our requirements in our local code.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question. I didn't quite understand the monitoring plan. It said in the report was something that would be finalized at a later date. What's the oversight for that? Is that just internal with the Corps, or is there another agency that would oversee that?
Yeah, so part of what's happening is that the Corps has not yet received its biological opinion from National Marine Fisheries Service, which would really probably lay out a lot of the requirements and identify any impacts, best management practices, reasonable and prudent alternatives related to impacts on habitat and wildlife. And I think part of that monitoring would probably address, I think, to Commissioner Johnson's question, the issue of avian predation. And we did have a lot of discussion in our weekly meetings about this with the state and with the Army Corps. But until that biological opinion's been issued and those impacts and the requirements to address those impacts have been identified by NIMS, we don't really, nobody has a plan because we don't know what the plan has to address at this point, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion for planning commissioners? My main concern is with the avian predation. The Corps of Engineers and the Port of Portland have been creating islands and doing channel maintenance for my whole lifetime. And I think that that's one of the main issues that I've seen that it's caused in the lower river is the avian predation. That's just gotten out of control, and nobody seems to have a real solution about it. And now some of the birds have moved their nesting over to the Lewis and Clark, or the bridge, the Megler Bridge, which is causing other issues. So I'm hoping that gets addressed by someone at some point, and I don't know that we have the ability to address that with this process here, but it is a main concern that I have with this whole island creation and dredging of the channel. I'm someone that spends a lot of time in the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge. I have since I was a young kid. I also own a historic duck shack out there on Woody Island, which is adjacent to some of these sites. I do have concerns that these islands out there, they're used for recreation, but they are filling in. All the sloughs and channels within those islands have been slowly filling in throughout the years from what I've seen. Recently, in the last couple of years, we had to drive new pilings and move our recreational duck shack away from one of the islands just to get to deeper water because it's been infilling in that whole area. So I don't know if this is going to exacerbate that issue or not. I don't know that we'll be able to address that here at this time, but from what I've been seeing, that there has been significant infill within those islands, and I don't know if maybe the applicant can respond to that, to those points, and how we're gonna deal with some of those issues. I'm kind of surprised that I haven't heard anything from the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge because they're heavily involved with any minor little issue that we want to do something small out in the National Wildlife Refuge, and so far, I haven't heard anything in this process, which seems like a kind of a major construction process. So, those are my comments, and if the applicant wishes to respond, I'd welcome it.
Yeah, I think it's largely been covered, but those are topics that will get picked up as a part of the BIOP. So I think that's really the venue when some of those issues will get addressed in more detail.
Sure, okay. Will the county get a chance to weigh in on that, or provide comments, or provide their concerns when, on that opinion, or is that something that is just completely independent from anybody, when that occurs?
Yeah, so the county will not be part of negotiating that, or reviewing it or making comments on it. We will receive a copy once it's been received by the Army Corps, and the Army Corps then will be issuing their final environmental impact statement, which would include that. But we will not be weighing in on it.
Right, okay. Any other discussion from planning commissioners? If not, I will request a motion on this, and if the staff could maybe pull up that proposed motion.
Yeah, if you can go back to the presentation, Rebecca.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2503 as presented with conditions.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Commissioners online, do we have a motion on the table, do we have a second?
I apologize, was that a motion to adopt?
That was a motion to, recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt.
Okay, I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to, adopt, can I read that, you wanna post that again, please? I'll read it.
Yeah, and if you can leave the PowerPoint open, Rebecca, because I'll have more slides.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that the Planning Commission recommends that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 25-03 as presented with conditions. All those in favor, could you call the roll call, please? Do a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Idika,
Here,
Commissioner Linder,
Nay.
Commissioner Satanovich,
Aye.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Aye. Okay,
I apologize.
I'm sorry, can we,
Just to clarify for the record, Commissioner somebody who said here.
that's.
Can you clarify your vote?
Mr. Idika, yeah, Idika. Sorry, I said here, I meant I.
Okay, yep. Thank you, Commissioner Idika. I apologize for interrupting.
Thanks for the attention to detail.
okay. Any opposed?
Commissioner Linder was opposed.
Commissioner Linder opposed. Okay, thank you very much. So I think, the motion passes. And we are ready to move on to our next public hearing. All right?
Yes.
Okay. This is a legislative hearing regarding ordinance 25-04, a request by Tetra Tech on behalf of the Port of Portland for an exception to Goal 16, estuarine resources to allow dredge material disposal at 6 sites within the Columbia River estuary that are designated as natural. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Hearing none, does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? Hearing none, staff report. Will staff please make their report?
Yes, thank you. So the ordinance 2504 will begin on page 191 of your agenda package. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So these are the 6 sites that are under consideration for the goal exception as part of this ordinance. There are 6 of them, and you'll see one of them is labeled with a W. What that's indicating is that it's actually on the Washington side of the navigation channel, so closer to Washington, but it's still within the state boundary for Oregon. So it's labeled with a W, but it is one of the sites that we have jurisdiction over. Let's see here. 2 of the sites, 25.4 BN, which is beach nourishment, and 27.5 BN are considered shoreline beach nourishment sites. Site 26.7 is an in-water shallow site, but it is also a confined aquatic site where a new in-water retention structure is proposed. That structure would be approximately 850 linear feet. And then the remaining 3 sites, W21.2, 25.4, and 30.8 are in-water shallow sites, again, at depths less than 20 feet. I'm not going to go through the amount of detail that I went through with Ordinance 2503 because the reasons and the findings are almost identical. So Rebecca, if you could just basically forward through, you get to the slide that has the recommendation in it. We talked a little bit about avian predation, and so with the confined aquatic site, which will have the potential for piles, where birds can roost and things like that, we spent a lot of time discussing those issues, and I know we just discussed it with the previous ordinance. Again, until we get that biological opinion from the Fisheries Service, nobody knows what the requirements are going to be. We know that there is a concern. We know that most likely something will need to be done. But at the county level, we don't have the ability to require that adaptive management plan. We have requirements in our code that do require the monitoring plans. And so we've put conditions of approval in here, which begin on page 420 of the agenda package. I specifically wanted to point out a couple of conditions. So we've got the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has issued their recommendations, and if you see condition 11 on page 421 of the staff report, that condition states that applicable, reasonable, and prudent measures and conservation recommendations developed during preparation of a biological opinion or through ongoing consultations with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service shall be implemented to the maximum extent practicable. And then condition number 12 below that is what will require the county to receive a copy of the NIMS biological opinion once the Army Corps has received it as well. I also want to make sure that the Planning Commission is aware, condition number 8 talks about avian predation management techniques, and that how those will have to be compatible or consistent with the biological opinions that are going to be issued. So condition 8 also addresses avian predation. And then as part of this, the state Department of Land Conservation and Development, as part of the Coastal Zone Management Program, also has to issue a consistency determination that looks at whether or not the proposed activities are consistent with statewide planning goals and with our local ordinances as well. So there's a lot of discussion about these conditions of approval, knowing that the Army Corps will not be applying for local permits, but on the off chance that a non-federal user wanted to use one of these sites, which I know the applicant has said is not likely, but we have to plan for that possibility because we don't know what will happen. These sites, once, if they are approved, will be on the books in perpetuity. So it's not as if they expire at some point. We're setting this up for the rest of humanity, potentially. So we tried to cover a lot of different things here, and a lot of more specific conditions, it's possible, may come out of that consistency determination that the state will issue, because they do have a little bit more authority than the county does, at least in my opinion. But having said all that, the same conditions, the same reasons, exceptions were presented, the same basic identical findings as the report for 2503. We did come to a determination that with these conditions of approval that you see on pages 420 and 421, that the applicant could meet all the requirements of the reasons exception and be compliant with the applicable policies from our comprehensive plan and the standards in our implementing ordinances. And so, as Rebecca has put up on the screen here, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners that the ordinance 2504 be adopted as presented with the conditions listed. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for staff at this time? I don't have any questions. Well, I think we're ready for the applicant. Does the applicant have anything to say on this ordinance?
No, thanks. I think we'll just stand with our kind of original introduction, which again was intended to cover all 4 ordinances. So, yeah, nothing additional to add on this one. Thank you.
And just for the record,
Okay.
the applicant incorporates their previous comments on ordinance 2503 on this ordinance, proposed ordinance 2504 as well.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners for the applicant or staff? If not, I'm gonna open this hearing for public testimony and failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board or to LUBA based on that issue. All speakers from the floor are to sign in, state their name and address before speaking, and if you are appearing in a representative capacity, identify who you represent. Limit remarks to a reasonable period of time, 3 minutes, in order to permit all present an equal opportunity to speak. Do we have any public testimony on this issue? There's no one signed in on the forms that I have in front of me. Do we have anyone in the audience or online that wishes to speak on this ordinance 25-04? Hearing none. Any public agency comments? Hearing none. Does the staff wish to respond to anything?
No, thank you.
Any final questions of witnesses or staff? Hearing none. Public testimony is closed at 11:11. And discussion is now open for Planning Commission members. Any discussion, Planning Commissioners? I don't have any further discussion. We have quite a few conditions on here, so, which I'm in agreement with. I would request a motion and a second.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2504 as presented with the conditions.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a motion and a second that the Planning Commission recommends that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 25-04 as presented with the conditions. Any discussions on that, If not, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Itica,
Yes.
Commissioner Linder,
Nay.
Commissioner Stefanovic,
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. We'll move on to our next ordinance, which is 25-05, a request by Tetra Tech on behalf of the Port of Portland to amend the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan to document exceptions to Goal 16 to allow dredge material disposal at 6 sites designated natural and zone aquatic natural, and 4 sites designated conservation other resources, and zone aquatic conservation 2. The amendments would also add dredge material disposal as an allowed use in the heavy industrial zone. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? Hearing none, so we are ready for our staff report.
Okay, thank you. So ordinance 2505 will begin on page 423 of your staff report. Next slide, please. It's going to amend different sections within 5 articles of the Land and Water Development and Use Code, or what we call LAWDUC. Article 1, we're just adding some definitions to clarify what is a confined aquatic placement, shallow water placement, shoreline placement, and what is a transfer site. That's pretty straightforward. In Article 4, we are adding upland disposal of dredged materials as a Type 1 use in the heavy industrial zone. There is a designated site at the Wana Mill that, on property owned by Wana, that is used for dredge disposal, or has been, but for some reason the use was never added to the zoning district back in 2005 when they added that site to the map. So we just want to clean that up. And then we're going to make some changes, proposed changes to the aquatic conservation 2 zone and to the aquatic natural zone to include standards that would be used to determine consistency of these dredge material disposal sites with the zone. For federal users, these are standards that would be applied to the maximum extent practicable. Again, there are no local permits that federal users get. If at some point in time in the future a non-federal user came in, they would need to comply with these standards, and so that's why we're adding them to the code. And then we're also putting in some language in the aquatic natural zone that would require disposal of dredge materials to provide an impact assessment for the activity. Next slide, please. Article 5, which covers special district, this is where we have our dredge material disposal site overlay regulations, and so we're going to be adding notes to that section to note that if these goal exceptions are approved, that will get documented in the ordinance. And then add what the new types of activities that are proposed as part of these goal exceptions, what is being called shoreline placement, the transfer sites, and the confined aquatic placement and shallow water placement. So just making sure that those are listed as uses that are permitted within the overlay. Next slide, please. And then in Article 6, this is really to do a lot of the same things that we're doing with Article 5, but just making sure that these new activities that are going to be taking place, which we haven't previously spelled out in our code, are listed in the dredge material disposal standards section in Article 6. And then, and that's it. Stop. Okay, next slide, please. Right. So staff is recommending that if the goal exceptions are approved, that we also adopt ordinance 2505 as presented, and staff would recommend that you make this motion to move it forward to the Board of Commissioners. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, any questions for staff at this time? Hearing none, does the applicant have anything they'd like to say on this ordinance?
No, just that we incorporate our previous comments here as well, but nothing new to add. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we're going to move on to public testimony. This hearing is open for public testimony, and failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board or to LUBA based on that issue. All speakers from the floor to sign in, state their name and address before speaking, and if you're appearing in a representative capacity, identify who you represent. Limit remarks to a reasonable period of time, 3 minutes, in order opportunity to speak. I don't have anybody signed in on my forms on this ordinance. Does anyone from the audience or online have anything to say on this ordinance 25-05? Hearing none, moving on to public agency comments. Are there any public agency comments? Hearing none. Staff have anything else to say, or is there any final questions to witnesses or to staff?
No, thank you.
Public testimony is closed at 11:18, and discussion is open for planning commissioners, and I will request a motion and a second on ordinance 25-05. I request a motion and a second.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2505 as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for the Planning Commission to recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 25-05 as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Itica,
Aye.
Commissioner Linder,
Nay.
Commissioner Stefanovic,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Continuing on to ordinance 25-06. This is a request by legislative hearing and a request by Tetra Tech on behalf of the Port of Portland to amend the county's dredge material disposal overlay map to add 10 sites that are currently designated natural and conservation other resources, and for which a goal exception has been requested. The amendments also include the addition of 8 dredge material disposal sites that are already being used, have previously approved, but have not been added to the overlay map, or which are proposed in areas where disposal is already allowed. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? Hearing none. Staff, we're ready for your report.
All right, thank you. Rebecca, if you could go 2 slides in, please. Yep, thank you. So these are the 18 sites that staff is proposing and the applicant has proposed. Again, we've talked about the 10 sites as part of the goal exception. The 8 sites, during our work as a cooperating agency and working off of our very, very old paper maps, we came across some discrepancies where ordinances have been adopted and maybe sites have been added or approved as disposal sites, but the map, our dredge disposal map, was never updated. There were a couple of other sites where the zoning would allow things like beach nourishment, but we just haven't added these sites to the map. So we're just trying to take care of all of this at once and clean this up. Staff is recommending approval, and I'm really just here to answer any questions you have on this one. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this time?
And Rebecca, you can go ahead. Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Applicant, do you have anything, any comments for us on this ordinance?
No, we just,
25-06?
incorporate our previous comments here as well, but nothing new. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This hearing is also open for public testimony, so I'll open the public testimony. And failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board or to LUBA based on that issue. All speakers from the floor to sign in, state their name and address before speaking, and if you're appearing in a representative capacity, identify who you represent. Limit remarks to a reasonable period of time, 3 minutes, in order to permit all present an equal opportunity to speak. I don't have anyone on my list up here. Is there anyone online or present that wishes to speak on ordinance 25-06? Hearing none. Are there any public agency comments? Hearing none. Any final questions of witnesses or staff? Hearing none, I'll close the public testimony at 11:23. Discussion is open for planning commissioners, and I will request a motion and a second on ordinance 25-06. Don't be shy. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that the planning commission recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 2506 as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second that the planning commission recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt ordinance 25-06 as presented. Could I get a roll call vote, please? Any discussion on that first? No discussion or amendments? Could I get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Itica,
Aye.
Commissioner Linder,
Aye.
Commissioner Stefanovic,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. Our next item on the agenda is ordinance 25-09. And it's a legislative hearing. And it's an ordinance repealing and replacing Clatsop County's comprehensive plan, Goal 18, Beaches and Dunes, amending Law Duck Article 5, special purpose districts, and adopting the Beaches and Dunes overlay, active dune overlay, construction setback line, dune morphology, and shoreline access inventory maps. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report?
I'd just like to say that I manage 3 oceanfront hotels in the county. They're in the city of Cannon Beach and Seaside, and dune management does affect them revenue-wise.
Okay, I think you just have to, you have to just state it, and if you believe that it's a conflict of interest, you can decide whether or not to vote on that or not vote on that. We'll move on from there. Let's see. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter at this time? If not, we are ready for our staff report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm David Cook, Planning Manager with Clatsop County Community Development. And I want to start by giving a brief overview of our project to update Clatsop County's Comprehensive Plan Goal 18, Beaches and Dunes. Staff have brought this project to your commission in the past, so I'll try to keep the background on this somewhat brief. Goal 18 covers the county's beaches and dunes, and the policies in the goal broadly cover topics like public access to the shoreline and to the beaches, coastal hazards, dune development and dune protection, erosion control, and cable landings. Next slide, please. Goal 18 is one of the county's last comprehensive plan goals to be updated in recent history. Most of our goals were updated, or they started being updated in 2020. They have since been adopted by the Board of Commissioners, so we've just got a few goals left, and this is one of them. There were three primary goals that staff had when starting this project. Number one is we wanted to make sure that the county's Goal 18 reflects any new mandates set by the state of Oregon. We wanted to incorporate new geologic data created by the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. And we wanted to update and digitize our mapping, as our current paper maps are not up to date, nor are they consolidated or easy to use, and they are somewhat falling apart in places. Next slide. This is a brief timeline of the project. We started scoping the work in late 2023, and we hired the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force to be the primary planner on the project. Across 2024 and early 2025, we hosted many in-person and virtual public meetings to collect feedback and understand our citizens' values for Goal 18. We also met with key stakeholders such as community groups and state agencies as part of our technical advisory committee. By the end of March of 2025, we had sent out a first draft of Goal 18 to our stakeholders, and since April of this year, we have been revising our drafts to incorporate stakeholder comments when possible, importing all of the new mapping data, and finalizing any background reports. Next slide, please. So during our outreach, we found that different groups had specific areas of concern. This slide is intended to be a brief summary of highlights from the input that we received. While not all requests from stakeholders were included in our new Goal 18, staff have attempted to include all stakeholder input when possible. Particularly for cable landings, for which the county currently has no policies or standards, we received a lot of important guidance from all of our stakeholders. Next slide, please. Thanks for your time this morning. While Goal 18 is somewhat technical and complicated, the ordinance before you will provide the county a much-needed framework update for our changing beaches and dunes. So in your agenda packet, you have the ordinance that your commission can make a motion on today. There's the Goal 18 document itself that goes on until page 569 of your agenda packet. And then there are the associated land and water development and use code amendments to Article 5, the special districts. That's intended to implement the new policies, and those amendments go on until page 587. Lastly, the remaining pages of your agenda item are map exhibits demonstrating some of the new data we've used to inform this project. There's a lot more data than what we show here in your packet, which is great, but it's really more than we can showcase in this presentation. Last thing I'll say before I turn it back to your commission is after we had sent out our agenda item for today, we did receive some feedback from a member of the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development who is requesting a correction or a change on one policy of Goal 18, and I will locate it for you now. So it's on page 564 and 565 of your agenda packets. And that policy reads, "Fore-dune grading for view enhancement or to prevent ongoing sand inundation may be allowed for structures in fore-dune areas that were or are committed to development on or before January 1st, 1977, and where an overall plan for managing the fore-dune grading is prepared." Based on input from the Department of Land Conservation and Development, staff is recommending that we remove the words that were committed to development on or before January 1st, 1977, as that is not a state mandate. So we are looking to get rid of that. So if your commission were to make a motion on this item today, it would be a motion to recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt Ordinance 2509 as corrected by staff. Thank you.
Okay, just to clarify that, so that you would eliminate the portion of that says that were committed to development on or before January 1st, 1977. So that would then read, for dune grading for view enhancement or to prevent ongoing sand inundation may be allowed for structures in foredune areas and where overall plan for managing the foredune grading is prepared. So it just eliminates that date out of there.
It eliminates the date. You also get rid of the and that comes after that comma,
And
just to clarify, sorry.
so if there's you have a plan in place, you're allowed to do that according to this. It doesn't put a date restriction on it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then there are actually, there's a law duct standard on page 584 of your agenda packet that would be revised with the same recommended language.
Okay, is that included in your proposed motion?
It would be, yes.
Okay. Any questions for staff on this? Hearing none right now. I don't really have any questions for staff. So this will open up the public testimony. This hearing is open for public testimony. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board or to LUBA based on that issue. All speakers from the floor to sign in, state their name and address before speaking, and if you're appearing in a representative capacity, identify who you represent. Limit remarks to a reasonable period of time, 3 minutes, in order to permit all present an equal opportunity to speak. We do have a name on my list, Scott McMullen. That would be the time. Welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson and Commissioners. My name is Scott McMullen. I live at 864 Irving Avenue, Astoria. I'm the chairman of the Oregon Fishermen's Cable Committee, based here in Astoria, but it's a statewide organization representing commercial fishermen and subsea cable owners in the state of Oregon. And so I came into this process a little late. I was at sea when I originally was notified of this process, and I dropped the ball and didn't get to it until much later in the process, and I apologize for that. But I do want to commend your planning department. They were great to work with and helpful in answering questions and helping me to understand what was happening. We appreciate the importance that is placed on cable landings in Clatsop County. Clatsop County currently has one cable landing in Warrenton, and as you may realize, it's hard to know it's even there. It's completely buried from the cable landing station, which is purposely built to look like a beach house, so it blends in. It's in the neighborhood, and if you drove by, you would have no idea that that is a cable landing station. From the cable landing station out to the beach vault, there are underground conduits, and I believe that when this was built, it was built by a company that has a cable to Alaska, and this is their U.S. U.S.-based connection. They put an extra set of conduits in the trench so that they could allow for a second cable to come in, which is part of your goals, and rightly so. This is a common practice of subsea cable owners to install extra infrastructure at the time of first installation. I did, in looking over the language, there's one area that I'm not sure. There's a possible conflict, or maybe you might call it a catch-22. The beach vault is located at the end of a road through the dunes, and where the construction line, there's a construction line setback, and it's on a map on page 613. It's really hard to tell if the existing beach vault is on the right side or on the left side of that line. And so while the goals here clearly state that it's preferable to land in an existing, in,
I think we can allow him to finish.
the goal here is to allow to use existing infrastructure as less impact. If it were placed, if these setbacks, construction setback line was in place in 2003 when that vault was installed, I'm sure it's fine. If that construction setback line was established after that, I can't say. It looks like it's very close one way or another, but there's a possibility that here you'd be recommending that you use existing infrastructure, but if that infrastructure is currently on the wrong side of the line, what do you do? So I think it can be worked out, but just wanted to bring that to your attention. And we support the language. And
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McMullen. Any questions for Scott? I just have one. For our staff, is there a way to address this particular issue at this time with in this process, with the goal process?
Yeah, Vice Chair Johnson. So the dune construction line would not prohibit the placement of new or co-located cable landings. The dune construction setback lines, they apply to all developments. But if somebody's going to go through with a conditional use permit to place a new cable landing or to co-locate a cable within an existing site, the standards that we're proposing in Article 5 of the law that don't prohibit that.
Okay.
And I would just also like to point out, just so everybody's aware, the construction setback line is based on four different things. There's the statutory vegetation line, which is established in ORS, which has been in place for decades. There's the Pinehurst construction setback line, which was established by ordinance in 1992, and the Surf Pines construction setback line established by ordinance in 1983. Anywhere else in the county, then the construction line is described in Article 3 of the code, and I don't think that's a new section.
Not a new section, that's correct.
So that's been in place as well for several decades.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. McMullen. All right, anyone else from the floor that wishes to speak on this? No? Anyone online that wishes to speak on this ordinance? Okay. Any public agency comments? Hearing none. Any other comments from the public, or does staff wish to respond to anything? If not, public testimony is closed at 11:40. And discussion is open for Planning Commission members. Any discussion, Planning Commissioners? If not, I'm going to request a motion. Do we have that? The proposed motion is on the screen. Unless anybody has anything else to add to that?
Actually, Vice Chair, if I may, I don't have the proposed motion on screen, but I could reiterate it to you verbally, if it's helpful.
Are you, is it different than the one that's proposed right there? With the changes that you suggest?
Slightly changed, yeah. So the number on the ordinance would change. I'll read it, if I may.
Okay.
So I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt Ordinance 2509 as corrected by Community Development staff. And if there's any confusion about what that correction was, please let me know.
Okay. Do we have?
Rebecca, you're on the wrong part of the agenda.
That's for 06, we're on 09.
Yeah.
Next
One I recommended. Rebecca, you could navigate to page 548 of the agenda packet.
Okay, any other further comments from anybody, or can I, get a motion on that?
I move that the planning commission recommend ordinance 2509 to the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners for adoption, including the corrections by staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Linder. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval of ordinance 25-09 with the changes made by staff. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Itica,
Aye.
Commissioner Linder,
Aye.
Commissioner Stefanovic,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Johnson.
Aye. Okay, so that concludes our ordinances, our hearings for today for our ordinances. And we'll move on. The next item, I think we can get through these fairly quickly. But I want to take a second to thank our staff and, for all the work that they did on preparing those ordinances. This was a rather thick packet that we received this week. And, I know they spent many months working through this process with, the Corps of Engineers and the Port of Portland, and a lot of work was put into this. So thank you, staff, for getting that done and proposing this to us. And now we'll move on to our project status report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson. Well, our project status report for the month of September is really just updates on all of these ordinances that we just heard today. So that's, 9/10 of the project status report were these ordinances. So the next steps on them are going to be moving to the Board of Commissioners at the first reading dates that are noted for each of them. The one I will highlight is Ordinance 2508, which is updates to the county's comprehensive plan goals 16 and 17. In the past, you may recall that we've talked a lot about the goal 16 and 17 and goal 18 sort of as like a, not necessarily one combined item, but that they're kind of moving at the same time. And at some point, Director Henriksen realized that there's no reason for that, and we can separate them just to sort of spread the workload out a little bit. And so we're spreading the workload out a little bit. So we will be taking Ordinance 2508, which is update to Goal 16 and 17, to your commission at your October hearing.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. Director's report.
Yeah, just a couple of items. The remand hearing for the Law Dock housing amendments is going to be held tomorrow night at the Board of Commissioners meeting, which begins at 6 p.m. We have the materials posted, and there's a link in your agenda if you want to go online and look at that. The LUBA remand is really focused on one particular item, which is in their decision, and that's related to a provision in OAR 660 Division 22 that deals with cumulative impacts from development. David gave you a good update on the comp plan. Tomorrow, also at the Board of Commissioners work session, which begins at 5 p.m., staff will be, from the fairgrounds and from planning, are going to be presenting a draft scope of work to the Fair Board to do the work to update their 2009 strategic plan. So if you're interested in that, we would encourage you to tune in. This isn't particularly, the strategic plan wouldn't come before your planning commission, but I just wanted to keep you in the loop on that since it is an important part of the community, and I know that people will probably have questions about it as we go forward. David has done some work pulling items out of our annual work plan, so we've got some additional public hearings scheduled for your planning commission. Next month, as David mentioned, goals 16 and 17. In November, earlier this year, since it's on a holiday, we canceled the November Planning Commission meeting. And then in December, we'll be bringing forward our annual package of legislative amendments to the law doc based on bills that were passed during the legislative session this year. That will include changes to our child care regulations to remove barriers, and then also a project that our planner, Jason Pollock, has been working on for a couple of years. We are going to move, hopefully, from our crayon wall map of our zoning, which was created in the 1980s. And Jason has gone through all the ordinances, verified the zoning, sent letters out where we've adjusted, made adjustments on web maps to match the official adopted crayon map. And we are hoping to adopt a real live digital zoning map, which would be incredible. And Jason has put in a lot of work on that, so kudos to him. And then in January, we are hoping to bring some updates to our sign regulations and look at creating an administrative variance process. That would be not a full-blown variance process, but something that could be done for very, very minor deviations where somebody needs to get a variance. We're still hoping to get a 7th Planning Commission member. The Board of Commissioners will be having interviews September 24th, yes. They are still trying to get a candidate from either District 1, which is Chair Quiles' district, or District 5, which is Commissioner Thompson's district. So those interviews will be on September 4th, hopefully an appointment on October 8th. And then finally, just a few updates about the department in general. We're almost to the end of all of our personnel transitions and retirements. And so Laura Byrne, who's the Building Codes Permit Tech, is retiring at the end of this year, so we're in the process of hiring her replacement. Rob Ledgerwood, who moved over to Building Codes from Code Compliance, we're now finally able to advertise for his position. And this Friday, David and myself and a few other staff members will be doing interviews for a planner for David's old position that he had before he moved up to planning manager. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else for the good of the order, or any other questions for staff on anything?
I just have something real quick. I know that regarding the FEMA buyout, there's some public meetings that are, I think there's at least one more this month. I just wondered, Director Henriksen, do you have any updates on that, or is that all kind of just the status quo? We're waiting to see what they come out with.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Linder. I forgot about that. So August 22nd, FEMA released its draft environmental impact statement for public comment. We have until October 6th to submit public comment, and anybody in the public can submit public comment. We are doing a work session with the board next Wednesday on September 17th to talk about comments that we would most likely want the board to submit on behalf of the county. Nothing has really changed. If you remember the whole Pick'em drama from 2024, this is the same drama, but with a 4th option added to it. So nothing has really changed. It's just become more complex. There is another public meeting, September 30th, I know for sure. I think the other three have already happened, but there is one on September 30th, and I will tell you that in a moment. September 30th. Yeah, it's at 6 p.m. It's a virtual meeting. If you're interested, I will send a link out to everyone on the commission so that you have that. But it's a 2-hour meeting. I've listened into 2 of the other ones. There's not a lot of information you're going to glean from it, frankly. It's a lot of John Graves talking about the history of the flood insurance program and the history of the biological opinion and the history of the lawsuits, and not a lot of meat about what this really is going to mean for people on the ground. So that's my opinion.
Does that fourth option, does that mean anything for us, or is that something that would be usable?
No, probably not. The fourth option, so the pick-uns were basically avoid all development, adopt a model ordinance, or do a permit-by-permit habitat assessment. With the BIOP, we either are going to adopt a model ordinance or take a checklist, go through our ordinance, figure out where we're deficient, and adopt what's missing. We can develop a community plan that addresses what we feel are our specific needs, send it to FEMA for them to review and approve. Our fourth option is we can enter directly into consultation with NIMS and get our own biological opinion, and there's not enough time and money in the world for the county to do that.
Get a different opinion is option 4. Okay, all right. Anything else? Hearing nothing, we are adjourned.